Yeah, I mean, it's not ideal at all. And last night in the spokesman's statement, the junta spokesman's statement on state television, he said that they would be prosecuting the president before national authorities, that they were gathering evidence to prosecute him and collaborators, essentially. They also accused West African politicians and their international mentors, to quote, of derailing the peace process and coming up with false allegations, and said that they were charging the detained President Bazoum after his interactions with them, his communications with them. Now, this is completely, it is a shock, but it's also completely counter to what we saw and heard over the weekend. It seemed as though diplomatic talks were back on track after a religious delegation of Nigerian Islamic scholars met with the junta's head and came back and reported that the junta was open to meeting with leaders of the regional bloc ECOWAS and wanted to peacefully resolve the issue. Now, this delegation didn't leave Nigeria without permission of Nigerian President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Tinubu also heads up the regional bloc ECOWAS, which last week had decided to put their force on, activate their standby force with the contribution of 1,100 troops from Côte d'Ivoire. Even though they did say that they would be continuing to pursue talks with the junta, they very much made it clear that military option was still on the table. So it seems quite contradictory. We're not sure whether there is an openness to diplomacy after all, considering they're planning to move forward in prosecuting the president, whose health has been reported as increasingly deteriorating. So we're not only on the precipice of the president being prosecuted, losing his physical well-being over this period, we're also on the precipice of a regional war and also increased jihadist militancy in the wake of this chaos, because jihadists are apparently celebrating the chaos and say they have more freedom of movement in the wake of this coup.
Yousra, what does this mean for ECOWAS? Do they risk coming out of this looking like a toothless, ineffective body if, now that they've put that military option on the table, they don't rally their forces and go in?
I think that ECOWAS is not allowing for there to be any room for them to be seen as toothless, because after their meeting in Abuja last week, I think there was an expectation that they would, de-escalate, that they would take military intervention off the table, but they did the opposite. They activated their standby force. So they've made it very clear that they're willing to intervene if this coup isn't reversed. And I think that speaks to the fragility of regional leaders in neighboring countries in the wake of this coup. Nigerian President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who is leading the regional bloc, has had been dealing with protests in Nigeria for the last few weeks. He's also not got a great history with the military dictatorship that was governing Nigeria for decades. So I think all of them are feeling the pinch, and I don't think ECOWAS leaders will back down.